Our word today is from 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 9. There Paul writes, "Therefore we also have as our ambition, whether at home or absent, to be pleasing to him." In the context, Paul is talking about our life as children of God and the reality that we live in these mortal earthly bodies, but God has prepared for us a home in heaven, a home that is made not with hands, but by God, that is eternal. And there is this tension which we all live with, that we desire to be in God's presence, in our heavenly dwellings, in our eternal bodies that are not subject to pain or illness or suffering. But the reality is we are now in this body, this mortal body. But he says, whatever the case, we have a singular ambition. Now, ambition is something that we almost all have. We may lament at times that a certain person seems to lack ambition, that they lack motivation in a sense. But we all have ambition. For some, ambition is the drive to acquire something, to become wealthy, or to be able to purchase a certain type of vehicle. It may be a drive or a desire to achieve a certain position or status, to become president of a company, or to own your own business. Ambition is that which drives us, which motivates us to a particular end or objective. And Paul says we have as our ambition, whether we're in this earthly mortal body or in God's presence, to be pleasing to him. So the question that poses is that my ambition? Is that your ambition? What are our ambitions in life? And do our ambitions block or stand in the way of pleasing God? That's a very important question. Do my ambitions hinder me from pleasing God? Or do my ambitions help me to please God? So let's think for a moment what it is that pleases God. When Jesus was teaching his disciples, he talked about those who had received talents or minas, material money from a business owner, a landowner, while he went away on business, and they were told to do business with that money until he returned. When he came back, those who had made a return on his investment, who had gained a profit on his investment, he said, "Well done, good and faithful servant." That reminds us that God wants us to use the resources he's given to us for his benefit, for his glory, so that one day we can stand before him and he can say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." It also means that we walk in obedience to him. But here are three things that I think will help us to keep in mind what it means to please God. Number one is to live according to his priorities. Now, priorities are things that have relative importance to other things. I have these top three priorities. I'd like to do these other things, but these are the three most important things I want to achieve or accomplish in my life or in this day. And we need to have God's priorities as our priorities. We need to make his direction for us our choice. When we set out a map in life, that map should be guided and directed by God. Jesus said, "Enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the path that leads to destruction." So which gate have I gone through? Which path am I going down? And he says, "Enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is narrow and the path is narrow, which leads to life, and few find it." So my direction in life should be the direction that God calls me to follow, that through that narrow gate, on that narrow path, not turning to the right or to the left. And then his agenda should be our agenda. An agenda is something that we set out as a list of objectives. Oftentimes we think of an agenda in terms of a meeting. A committee or a business group gets together and they set out an agenda. These are the things we're going to discuss in this meeting. There might be other things that come up, but we'll put that on the list for the next meeting. This is our agenda for today. And we need to to follow God's agenda for us. His agenda includes things like loving Him wholeheartedly, loving our neighbor intentionally, loving other believers sacrificially. And so we need to live by His priorities, follow His direction, and live according to His agenda so that we can stand before Him and hear Him say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." It's quite interesting that oftentimes our ambition is not to please God, but to please others. Paul warns about living in a way that we give eye service to others, or we live to please men rather than to please God. It's interesting to see on many of the reality shows, especially the cooking shows where people are chefs and they're in competition. And their goal very often is to prove to their parents that they made a good choice in becoming a chef as a career. And they're oftentimes in deep anguish that they want their parents' approval, that they made a good decision to be a chef. Well, we should live with that kind of perspective, not so much anguish, but certainly make it our ambition to live in a way that's pleasing to God, whether at home or absent, that we can be pleasing to Him. So as you go through this week, just ask yourself, is this agenda, is this objective something that would please God? Or should I adjust my agenda, my priorities, so that when I stand before Him, I can hear Him say, "Well done, good and faithful servant."